La Asamblea escuchará.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Juan Manuel Santos Calderón, President of the Republic of Colombia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency.
En nombre de la Asamblea.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Juan Manuel Santos Calderón, President of the Republic of Colombia, and to invite him to address the Assembly. President.
Señora Presidenta.
Madam President, heads of state and government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank our ambassador, Maria Emma Mejia, for allowing me to speak. What great pride it is for us that a Colombian woman is presiding at this session, at this historic moment. The General Assembly of the United Nations, in its 70 years, is dedicated to the theme of the path towards peace, security and human rights. And this is the path that Colombia is on more than ever before now, and for that reason I feel honored to come to this assembly to share with you some news which is also historic. Today I proclaim to the entire world that of the more than 20 armed conflicts taking place across the globe and which cause so much pain, poverty and suffering, there is one, the one taking place in my country, in Colombia's conflict, which is on the final path towards a genuine solution. We will put an end to the longest and final armed conflict on the Western Hemisphere, because achieving peace in Colombia or in any other part of the world is a responsibility that nobody must shirk. As Pope Francis said so well barely a few days ago in the US Congress, when countries that have been in armed conflict return to the path of dialogue, new horizons open for everybody. This has required and will continue to require courage, audacity, but this does not mean lack of responsibility. So, in Colombia, we have been able, with that courage and with that audacity, but also with this responsibility of which the Holy Father spoke, and we are beginning to see the fruit of our efforts. We've had more than 50 years of internal warfare in a country which should be living progress and happiness, and we are determined to put an end to that conflict, because peace is a difficult task, but it's not an impossible one. Path is something more than just the fruit of a political, social, or economic process. Path, more than anything, is a great process of collective cultural transformation which begins with an individual spiritual change, and it requires that every individual in themselves opens their mind, their heart, and their soul to reconciliation. And why am I saying that today I come to this assembly with greater optimism than ever before? Well, it's because less than a week ago in Cuba, Havana, following almost 3 years of negotiations in which we have made progress on the most significant parts of the agreed agenda, we reached an agreement on what was perhaps the most significant obstacle to peace. We've reached an agreement on the most difficult element of any peace process, and that is a system of transitional justice, which ensures that there is no impunity for the most serious crimes committed during the conflict. With this agreement, which respects the norms and principles of international law and of our own constitution, we place the rights of the victims to justice, as well as to truth, reparations, and the non-resumption of the conflict. We put their rights at the center of the solution to an armed conflict. And we are reaching our goal, and our goal is maximum justice, which allows us to turn towards peace. This is also the first time in the history of conflicts in this world that a government and an illegal armed group in a peace agreement, and not as the result of something which has been imposed later on, is creating an accountability system before a domestic court for international crimes and other serious crimes. We are establishing a precedent which could serve as a model for other armed conflicts in the world. This progress is so important and so significant because it allowed us to make 2 additional steps forward, and this is the best news that I am bringing to this great forum of the nations. We agreed upon a deadline for signing the final agreement which will put an end to our armed conflict, and it will be, at the very latest, the 23rd of March 2016. That means in less than 6 months from now. At the very latest on that date, we will be saying goodbye forever to the last and longest war in Colombia, and not just for Colombia, but for the entire Western Hemisphere. We also agreed that the FARC will begin to lay down their weapons no later than 60 days following the signing of the final agreement. So, next year, when I come back to this assembly, I will do so, please God, as President of a Colombia in peace and of a reconciled Colombia. Our talks with the FARC guerrilla thus offers a light of hope in a world overshadowed by war, violence, and terrorism. And this is also the opportunity to thank, on behalf of the 48 million Colombians, to thank the international community for their support, for its support for our peace efforts, and for its determination to support also the post-conflict stage. A Colombia at peace will be a positive factor for the world in areas such as diverse but as very much related amongst themselves, such as combating climate change, illegal drugs, security, and eradicating extreme poverty. Our country is proud to be the most biodiverse country on the planet in proportion to its size, but we are also one of the most vulnerable countries in the face of climate change. For that reason, we so much insist upon the environmental dimension of the Sustainable Development Goals. At the end of my term of office in 2018, I hope to have left behind protected areas in Colombia representing about 20 million hectares, which will be 1/5 almost of our entire national territory. And we strongly support the climate summit in Paris, COP21, at the end of this year. And we will bring to that meeting our commitment to contribute to the goal of reducing greenhouse gases. And we are also facing up to the problem of the illegal drug crops with a comprehensive strategy that we have proposed to the rest of the world. In the 2012 Summit of the Americas in Cartagena, I raised the need to have an objective assessment of the outcome of the so-called drugs war, which was announced here about 40 years ago, but which has been so costly in terms of lives, human lives and resources. And this study has been conducted, and it was submitted to the Organization of American States. And we are now preparing ourselves for a special session of the United Nations on this theme. And this will take place 7 months from now. And there we will continue to advocate a new global strategy which will be based on scientific evidence, which will put greater emphasis on health, education, and dealing with the social roots of this phenomenon, and which will seek to minimize the harm that is done by drugs through more intelligent and more human strategies and more effective strategies. In Colombia, we have not stopped there. Last week, we submitted a crop substitution plan, which is based on this multiple focus. We won't just attack the mafias, but also we will deal with providing economic and social opportunities to farmers, ensuring that the presence of the state and justice, and to prevent and deal with consumption as an issue of public health. Now, if we are ending this conflict, the guerrilla forces, which has been a negative factor in this drugs phenomena, will become, once they have laid down their weapons, an ally in combating it. This will have extraordinary symbolism, that those who were protecting these illegal crops will in fact now be helping to eradicate them. So Colombia wins, and the entire world will be a winner, because we will begin to free ourselves from the coca plant, and at the same time we will be preserving and saving millions of hectares of tropical forest. The Pope said so well in this very hall 4 days ago, and allow me to quote him: "War is the negation of all rights, and it's a serious aggression on the environment." A Colombia which is in peace will also be a safer Colombia, because the enormous energy and efforts which today are dedicated to dealing with this domestic conflict will now be dedicated to improving safety and security and dealing with crime in our cities, in villages of my country. And of course, it will be a Colombia with more opportunities for all, where we will continue to reduce poverty and generate jobs, as we have been doing at a rhythm which puts us at the head in Latin America in terms of social progress over recent years. So peace will allow us to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, which are now enshrined in the laws of our Republic and which we have approved in the 2030 Agenda. I now invite Colombians, without any exception, and to all the citizens of the world, that we give a great opportunity to peace. The most worthwhile legacy that we can leave to our children and to future generations is peace. Nothing can be more important or more urgent, because peace is the supreme good of any society and the most sacred good and the very reason for the existence of the United Nations. Today, with great happiness and emotion at this good news, I am here to announce to the world that in Colombia, in less than 6 months, the bells will ring out again, proclaiming the time of peace has come. It is my hope that the clocks around the world will be synchronized with our own, showing the same time, the time of peace, the time for humanity as a whole. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, President Santos. On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Colombia for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the President.